This is Metamorphosis podcast. Welcome back, everyone. Today, Jasmina is back. Hi, Jasmina.
Hi.
How are you today?
I am good. How are you?
Well, considering today's topic, depends. I want to thank everyone for tuning in, whoever is watching and listening to me, this podcast, Jasmina also. Thank you for being here. This is, I think, a very important topic to discuss, and it relates to the crisis of meaning I happen to identify in contemporary society, Swedish society. And as you and I both live in Sweden, and we have a different perspective of what is going on here, I think you are a good candidate, so to say, to discuss these things about, namely to see the dynamics between men and women, especially young men and women in Sweden, and to discuss deeper and in deeper detail on how people are conditioned to treat each other and to maintain, and what kind of relations they maintain with one another. More aiming at utilitarian aspect of relationships. And what I would like to hear you or us speak more about or elaborate is it true, or would you think it's true, and to what extent that young people in Sweden and thus in the West are more prone to having utilitarian relations with one another, so using each other for gains or means to an end, instead of aiming to form sustainable, loving relations, maybe build a family, community, tribe, which we are losing the more we advance as a society. What is your take on that?
Well, firstly, thank you for inviting me again and valuing my humble opinion and thoughts on these matters. So thank you for that. Yes, I do believe that there is a certain amount of more utilitarian relationships in the westernized societies, as Sweden is. Because I believe, and I would love to be wrong, that people are very individualistic here. They look out for themselves, each man for their own, whereas in some other countries and cultures it is more community-based, not to say tribe-based, but community-based. We rely more on our elders, we take care of our grandparents, we don't put them in homes and never visit them. I think we in these westernized societies, in Sweden in particular, because Sweden is apex in many things, depending on how you view it, if it's a good or bad thing, but very individualistic. What is it, 50% one person household, and suicide rates skyrocketing?
Yes.
So yeah,
it is also an illusion that these people are individuals because they are still dependent on this government. And that is, I think, a deeper layer of this misunderstanding and misconception of what this individualism is, as you said yourself. I think there is a enormous confusion because as we progressed as societies, you and I often speak about community and tribe. And I'm not saying or advocating that we're going to go back. I don't think that's possible at this point. I would like to, as you say, to be wrong. What I want to say is that since we lost community and tribe, or we're losing it, now community and tribe is based and are revolving around capitalism. And it's very important that you contribute. So your intrinsic value is slowly disappearing because now you're measured more based on your utilitarian value. Yeah. What is your use to this tribe? What is your use and value to this community? And I'm not saying that is a wrong aspect. I think that is one of the crucial aspects of having or forming a sustainable community. And at the same time, not avoiding the intrinsic value will contain, which is so easily lost if there are all these systems that kind of do not care about you unless you abide by the system rules. So even this strata of people that are conditioned to believe that they can make it on their own, and we listen to that in social media, especially us men. We hear that all the time. Be independent, be on your own. You're going to make it. You're a man. You don't need women, and similar narrative. It is not going to end well if men continue doing that, for example. And for women, it's already proving to be very detrimental to their health and well-being, based on, again, I'm not blaming feminism because it doesn't exist as such. It exists as an ideology. But also women made one fundamental mistake, which is thinking that the most important thing in life is career and is job and work. And we see in real life how this ended up and developed, because we have unprecedentedly low birth rates, marriage rates, and happiness rates in women. And this, of course, does not exclude men. This is not something that is a separate issue from men. We can coexist in this world and live in it as men and women. And I cannot, as a man, say that I'm happy or feeling better when I know women around me are suffering. I'm also not going to be entertained by indignation and blame them or point finger at them and say, well, you made bad choices. You should have made better choices for yourself in your life. But instead, what do we do now? Because it is very easy to abandon these women, to say, well, you're a so-called leftover woman, and men are just going to go entertain themselves with younger women. But that is not going to work either, because then the competition is going to be so high amongst men for these rare women, so to say. And I don't think that's an adequate approach either, because we do live in a society, and we need to see to what measure our responsibility is inherent in being a member of such society. I think what I want to touch upon more specifically is that when I see, again, my generation, younger people also, I'm 30, so when I see younger men and women, I see this very easygoing way about life, and I don't condemn it. I simply see lack of responsibility inherent in suffering. So the modern individual has everything at the touch of at a click. You can order something if you need it. If you are sexually displeased, if you're displeased with your life, you can watch porn. If you're a woman, and this is, again, very sensitive to say, but for example, the discussion I have in my communities regarding women is, for example, women using sex toys, and that being very unattractive to men, because both men and women are sedating themselves and not allowing themselves to form genuine connections. So what happens as a result? As a result, we become consumeristic, and we become consumerists, and we consume pleasure instead of connecting with each other, and pleasure being the outcome of that. So do you understand what I'm trying to say? So if pleasure is the goal, then we are hurt. Then we are deeply, deeply wounded, because the pain then becomes the substitute for the pain. The pleasure becomes a substitute for the pain.
But inevitably, too much pleasure becomes pain.
Exactly. And that is, again, what I see in the West. Everything is affordable. Everything, you can, just go to work. You can have everything if you're going and working 9 to 5. And you can afford everything because everything is there and ready for you just to consume more and more and more. And buy, and you will have, and you will be empty yet again. And what kind of relationships can you form as such a person? Man or woman? None. Non-existent. Or they will be based on those same principles and values inherent in the way you treat the same things you purchase. So if I invest in things, then it won't be investing either. If I buy things and I just dispose of them when they're no longer useful, but I'm just keep going for the next best thing more and more and more, then that is how I treat people in my life too. Everything is related and everything is connected, and it's inevitable for that system to fail. Yeah. What do you think?
You said many, many great things there that I agree with, and to add on to that, I recently made a video on cheap dopamine, and by cheap dopamine we can insert anything. You mentioned porn, you mentioned quick fixes, quick relationships, everything's on demand. So we kind of, yes, we do get sedated by that, and what that does to us as humans, man or woman, is okay, so I'm satiated now. I had this cup of coffee, I watched that movie, met this person, next, more, because that leaves a longing for more. So there always needs to be something more, better, more impactful to actually give us the same hit. It's like a drug, basically. So in that kind of society, with young people, you know the saying, the grass is greener where you water it?
Yes.
And I don't think it's that saying does not exist for nothing, because it really is greener where you water it, starting with oneself, exactly. And how you treat yourself. Literally, how you treat yourself. What is your relationship with yourself? Are you mindlessly scrolling social media? Are you mindlessly going to work? Are you on autopilot? Are you eating junk food, watching, Netflix hours on end? How do you conduct your life with yourself? Not, hear me on them, not perpetuating this spiritual bypassing, avoidant behavior of, oh, that person doesn't suit me, or that doesn't fit me, so I'm just gonna, leave them before they leave me. Rather, what's your relationship with yourself? And that will be mirrored in your outward relationships as well.
Of course.
So,
of course.
an individualistic society as Sweden.
And there is no such thing ultimately. That's the irony. Because I've never met more isolated and lonely and depressed people. But there is the illusion of community, and there is the illusion of safety, and there is no such thing. As someone, I'm not a victim here, but as someone who is curious about the truth and wanting to discover the truth, I speak to local people, not saying they are Swedes. Sweden is, I think, one of the most mixed nations in the world. Like, there are different nationalities living in Sweden, many naturalized Swedes. I'm technically a Swede. You're technically a Swede. And the division is in confronting the so-called values, societal values. Yeah. Because you mentioned like jantelag, like this
Jantelagen.
Exactly. And for those of you who don't know what this is, correct me if I'm wrong, the principle of not sticking out.
Yeah, you could say that. Everybody should be equal, and nobody should be better nor worse. And yeah.
And here is an enormous problem with that. And this is why gender politics and identity politics works really good in Sweden. Because Sweden is a fertile ground for that. Because Sweden already doesn't appreciate individual quality and individual as such. Because we can be equal, and we are. All humans are equal. But we also have unique qualities. And we have unique perspectives and experiences of life. And instead of us capitalizing on that and each other and allowing each other to grow, I'm speaking about myself, when I speak to people in Sweden about these things or anything that concerns me as a man, as a human being living in a very confusing world, the normal approach and answer I get is, don't step on anyone's toes. Just mind your own business. Why is this interesting to you? And I cannot help but ask them, but how is it not for you? How do you if you avoid stepping on so many toes, you end up tiptoeing all your life.
Yeah. Walking on eggshells.
You're going to be walking on eggshells, and you're going to be a shadow for the rest of your life. Because if you avoid conflict, and this is one of my main points here, a nation or a world of conflict avoidant people is not a good place to be in. Conflict does not mean that we're going to kill each other, that we're going to go at each other's throats if we disagree. We have to disagree and learn how to live together. That is how you form a healthy society and community and relation. Because if we alienate and ostracize each other simply because we have a different opinion, and opinions are nothing more than a conglomerate of impressions and conditionings, then what are we doing? Why is then there so much division that leads to so much disconnection with one another if we all are equal in the end? And there is no difference. If I think one thing and you think another, we can still sit here and talk, and still everything's going to be okay. It's going to be a bit uncomfortable. Normally is when you disagree with someone. Yeah. And to everyone watching this, just learn to deal with that. Just learn to sit with discomfort. Don't sedate. Don't medicate. Don't avoid. Don't
escape it.
Don't project. Take responsibility.
But do you think that people are aware when they're projecting I don't think people might be aware all the time when they're projecting.
We are not aware when we project, and that is exactly why we need people who love us and care for us enough to tell us that. Hey, did you realize what you just did? Did you realize you might have said something that have upset that person? Where did that come from? Or just someone who you trust or who trusts us enough to do something like that for us, because we can do it on our own. It takes a tremendous amount of effort and work. But to have people around oneself that care about him or her, that are willing to step over their own line, like I do often, for example, with you or with people that are dear to me and whom I love, and I say, hey, what did you do just now? Because that's a very deep question. Just asking someone, just looking at people in the eye.
Yeah. Making them aware.
And asking them, what did you just do? Do you know what you just did? Not projecting my own opinion.
Yeah.
Because I might see something else, and you might see something else. But let me understand this. What did you just do? Because I might be hanging out with someone who is a completely different person than what they present themselves to be. And I might not want that for myself. I might be presenting myself falsely without knowing it. I don't want that for myself. So I can always ask from someone I love and think and want to love me and hopefully loves me to say, hey, did I do something? And what did I do? Wrong, right, doesn't matter. How was this perceived? And if it's not grounded in truth, well, maybe that's not the person to be around.
Can you elaborate? What do you mean?
So there is an enormous responsibility in being someone's friend, lover, family. It's an enormous responsibility to speak honestly, to stand up to injustices, to stand up to harm, to stand up to evil. So if someone whom I love is being harmed and they don't see it, I risk, for example, that friendship. I risk by telling them, hey, I think a misdeed is being committed upon you. I think someone is treating you with disrespect, and I think you should not allow that. If that person doesn't see it for themselves, then I'm the one out. I'm the odd one out. And I'm willingly and willfully going to distance myself from that situation, not from the person. And this is, I think, very important for people to hear. I speak about this when I speak about red flags in women. There are, of course, in men too, but I'm going to just say one thing here. Red flags are not indicative of something being wrong with the woman. Red flags are indicative of you not wanting something, and you focus on the red flag. Red flag is not a woman. Red flag is a red flag. So it's not something that a person is that is toxic or wrong. It is the behavior that you identify as a pattern which you do not want to have in your life. That's a red flag. For example, alcoholism. I don't need to be an expert to see that a person is ruining his or her life via alcohol. So if I tell that person, hey, I love you, you're ruining your life with alcohol. How can I help you? Well, get away from me. I'm going to drink anyway. Then please do that, and I'm not going to witness that. I want you. I wish you all the best. I love you, but I refuse respectfully. I'm just going to check the time. Lovingly to partake in that. That's what I mean. Take responsibility for that. I love you. I'm going to love you from a distance a bit. I'm not going to watch you ruin yourself. I'm not going to contribute to your downfall. If you want to rise, I'm here, but I'm not going to watch you fall. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
So we do have a responsibility as friends, as human beings, as society, partners, close relationships.
You name it.
To voice what we see going on. If we perceive that it's wrong or unhealthy, I wouldn't go so far to say it's toxic, because what is toxic? That word is such a trend word, and everyone's toxic, everything's a red flag. But I would rather say, if we identify something, an unhealthy pattern, or a pattern that is harming us or someone else, it is our responsibility, if we see it, not to stand back and shut our mouths, but to be like, hey, I I have noticed something, like there is something here. I would like to bring it up. Do you have the capacity for us to sit down and talk about this? Not necessarily sit down, but just to bring it up in a non-aggressive way, kind of, and just be like, this is happening. I see this. Can you see this too? And this is the outcome of this. This is how this affects me. And I see how this affects this relationship or what this is about. And then you have actually not, what is that saying when you have friends, for example, and you kind of allow them to go ahead with like bad behaviors, like you mentioned, alcohol.
To get away with stuff.
A real friend would rather say like, hey, you know what? Like, this is going a bit out of hand. Like,
but do you see, can I just challenge you on one thing? You just said something, a real friend, and that's again forming an image of what a real friend would do. And that's again a trap. So if I'm friends with someone and they don't do something what a real friend does, then I'm going to question their quality or our quality of friendship. So that's not fruitful in and of itself. And also you mentioned something that you don't like something being toxic. You don't like the word label toxic, but you use the word healthy. So those are the two sides of the same coin. If something is healthy, then there is something that's unhealthy.
Yeah.
So I don't think that we should focus on either. I think what we need to do and what we ought to do is to have discussions to get to know each other for who we are, not to be non-aggressive, as you said, because I think as a man, and I'm not justifying aggression, but aggression is who I am. Aggression is part of my nature. Not aggression in terms of harming someone physically. Aggression in terms of going for what I desire and want. Aggression is the main quality of me as a man that allows me to get things I want for my life and my loved ones. It is necessary for me to make my way up to the top. And when I say the top, I don't mean some hierarchy where we kill each other to get to the top so we can rule the world. I mean, go through life and face adversities, face difficulties without giving up. That is what aggression is in us men. And that is what guaranteed us survival to this very day. I don't think non-aggressiveness is the answer. I think aggression is necessary because I don't think suppression allows for blossoming of relations either.
Oh, no.
So
I was not saying that. That was not what I was saying. But aggression can also be... Aggression in and of itself is not inherently bad, but then I would say assertiveness is a better word, maybe. To be assertive, or assertive communication, but non-violent communication might be a better term for it.
But non-violence implies violence, because you use violence to suppress violence. Remember, Krishnamurti also speaks about this.
Oh, yes.
There is no such thing as non-violent communication, because everything that you suppress goes back to you. You become passive-aggressive then.
Yeah. Did you just blink at me? Passive-aggressive? No. What do you mean?
But do you see the paradox in that? That aspect of nonviolent communication, if that is not who you are, that is violence upon yourself. Yeah. Would you agree with that?
Yes, definitely.
Because if I'm angry at you, or angry, so it's my responsibility. And if I say, nonviolent communication, I must not say these things. That is violence. And who knows how that's going to manifest itself in the future? Who knows who's going to be in the way when that comes out?
Completely agreed.
Okay.
But also, to formulate my thoughts into words better, when bringing something up with a loved one, if we attack them, you do this.
Oh, of course.
Even if that is true, if it's not a projection, if we're like 100% clear it's not a projection, we just perceive a thing that's happening and we say, you do this, pointing finger. I don't like pointing fingers, pointing with the whole hand. What will that person, imagine that the person most likely will shut off or deflect or attack back. But if we bring something up to our loved ones, if we see something like, hey, why do you isolate yourself? Like, come on out.
So you approach with compassion, curiosity.
Definitely.
That is different.
Yes.
So do you think that people in, let's say, Sweden and West do that? Young people in particular.
Do young people even communicate in person anymore?
I think that's a very good question. I think that's a very good point.
Not generalizing, but like seriously, do they?
I think what we allowed to happen, and I say we because we humanity and parents and us who are going to be parents hopefully one day, is when you identify a behavior, I made a podcast earlier, a few weeks ago, about parents allowing their children, women, daughters, to dress promiscuously and not understanding the consequences of that. And this is not some traditional mindset. This is something that you also have in religious books. This is something you have, which is common sense. It is not something that I think is true, and therefore I want others to think that way. But there are aspects of behavior that we can identify as society, as parents, as peers, that we can speak about. But for some reason, what is being pushed is, you do you. You're right, and your personal truth. I like to call it like personal truth ideology, which is so divisive and delusive in its nature that I think it really impacted women mostly negatively in this century, because it affects men too. But men, we are naturally more rational, and what the world requires of us is actually much more than it requires from women in terms of physical work and labor and connection to groundedness to reality. And I think that when I see women, young women that have no peers or mothers present, or fathers for that matter, to tell them, is this how you communicate? Do you think this is good? What do you want from yourself 5-10 years from now? What friends do you want?
Yeah.
I'm not saying parents should interfere in children's lives, but they are part of their lives because we're all connected.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I love most about my own parents and family is that they asked me who I was with. They asked me where I went, because they were actually right most of the times. Because I was a child. I can't make my own decisions as a young child. And now we expect children to make a decision whether they're a boy or a girl. We give young children absurd responsibility over things they don't have authority. These are children who believe in Santa Claus. If you remember this insane documentary I showed you, the What is a Woman by Matt Walsh, you have a woman who is a so-called pedagogist and pediatrician who is has a psychology major and is a gender-affirming specialist who goes and tells young men and women that they are not who they are. And we are encouraging the same behavior in young men and women by telling them, you are whoever you believe you are.
Yeah.
And I think that is extremely harmful, especially to women.
Yeah.
And I'm going to explain to you why in 2 minutes.
A few moments later.
So where was I?
Children making decisions for themselves about gender change and...
Yeah, gender affirmation. And it is such an easy way to manipulate young children and to indoctrinate them and to completely control them. And people laugh. I'm not promoting Jordan Peterson or people like celebrities, so to say, but I happen to understand what Jordan Peterson is saying very, very deeply when he speaks about the dangers of progressive ideologies and how they might indoctrinate young children, because that is exactly what happened in Soviet Russia. And what happened is that young children would be told to, if they hear the family speak, mother or father or anyone, speak about Comrade Stalin in a bad way, that they should report that. And if they do, they're going to get unimaginable rewards and benefits. So what do the children do? Children don't know better. They hear their parents say that and they go and say, hey, mom and dad spoke about like this. And those parents get sent to Gulag. They will never see them again. And those children are going to now have new father and mother, which is the government, which is very familiar today. Yeah. And what do you get? They tell you what is right and what is wrong. And when you have a government telling you what is right and what is wrong, you are basically, it's dog. You are the dog of the government, and you have no value of your own as a human because you are basically conditioned to act in accordance with what the government says, thinks, does, everything. And there is no way to go against community like that, which is why I see so much danger in the LGBTQI movement. And I think that is very, very much confused with homophobia and hatred, because I think many people believe that there is hatred towards the LGBTQI community. And there isn't. These people are victims. They are not perpetrators or culprits. They are victims of brainwashing ideologies, as are these poor, poor children who believe that the reasonable way to form a relationship with another human is through sex, is through exchange of nudes, is through humiliating one another and being utilitarian. Oh, we just met, we had sex, bye. This meant nothing to me. And especially now that we have an increase of masculine women and an increase in feminized men. So women are now engaging in those kinds of behavior where they will have casual sex, decrease their probability and likelihood of forming a family with a man, because they will, imagine being a woman sleeping with 100 men. You find no value in that anymore. I'm not judging women who do that. I'm saying, how could you ever fall in love with a man after having slept with 100 men? Because you just see no value in sex. You do not associate that with intimacy anymore. Yeah. You do not associate connection as a crucial aspect of intimacy, getting to know someone else. Yet, when I meet these young boys and girls, these poor, poor young boys and girls, all I see is that. Remember what we spoke about, the glow in the eyes.
With the spark, like
the spark,
light.
The childish, childlike curiosity for life, the endless exploration of life. It's gone at 18, 19. And what kind of future do you expect for children that are 18 and 19 and lost, both men and women?
Yeah.
For women, it can be promiscuity and loss of purity. But for men, it manifests just the same, but in more masculine sense, because they're just pursuing money and quantity over quality. And they won't get satisfied either. They want power. They want cars, guns. They want to be strong. And I'm not going to say there's nothing wrong with that. It's the purpose. It's the intention. So the modern crisis of meaning is actually crisis of intention and identity and meaning. It's lack thereof. There is a lack of identifying what is important. Because as we said before we set up all these equipments to record this podcast, the contemporary individual, man or woman, pursues what is difficult to get, not what is rare and valuable and meaningful to oneself, and oneself to discover that. But we are so influenced by social media, by advertisements, by looking at other people. So we compare.
Yeah.
And there is no original idea. There is nothing that stems pure from this heart, beautiful heart of ours, that says, I want to do something for myself that no one has ever done before. Not because no one's ever done it before, but because, of course, because I'm unique and you are and everyone is. And you can do it. But since we are taught that success is achievable by following a pattern, we shoot ourselves in the foot.
Like the best dinners are the ones we just make. Yeah, let's just try this out, not following a recipe. This following recipes for success, for relationship, for dinner, whatever. No. Fear. I'd say that's escapism too. What came to mind when you were speaking of these young boys and girls today who use each other, very utilitarian, and thus no real connection, swiping on an app. I'm not condemning Tinder or any app. I know people who've met their, husband, wives, whatever. But it goes so far that people use, was it Gandhi who said, people use people and love things instead of loving people and using things. What I was getting at is, I believe it's a form of escapism too.
What is?
Being so afraid to connect with oneself.
Yes.
Because, wow, life is overwhelming. A little baby can develop emotions of guilt and shame when the parents do not change the diaper in time. It goes into intricate small details of our life, growing up, living this life. But we accumulate so many negative emotions, beliefs, I won't even say beliefs, because beliefs is the outcome of a faulty wired nervous system and, well, everything in life, basically, that we become so afraid to connect with ourselves. We mentioned this earlier, don't drink it away, don't smoke it away, sit with it, don't escape your emotions and everything what's happening around you. It's easier said than done, because if it was that easy, I believe that people would be doing it like nothing, like breathing like air, like, yeah. But not many people are doing it. And even when we hear, like, yeah, sit with it, what does that imply? What does it mean? What does it look like? Or when we said, have a healthy conflict. Conflict does not imply that it's the end of the world.
Yes.
Maybe we should demonstrate a conflict one time at a podcast. But I mean, well, just to wrap this up, I think that people are afraid of connecting with themselves, thus terrified to connect with another human being. And also maybe not knowing how to, because nobody taught them how to. How do we connect with ourselves to be able to connect with another? That requires parents that are emotionally regulated, who are able to hold all of their waves passing through them. Emotions are not wrong. You could be angry, aggressive, passive-aggressive, whatever. Just allow yourself to feel that. Or if it's numb, but it's coming out, that's harming people.
You said something, emotions are not wrong, and I agree with that. How you respond to those emotions, how you manifest and let that ripple outside of you, that is what can be wrong.
Exactly.
And that is where responsibility comes in.
Yes.
Utter responsibility over oneself, of oneself, and his or her emotions. To learn to observe. You said how to. I do not agree with that, because that implies that there is one way to do it. It might not be what you wanted to say, but in learning how to do something, I like to say I always learn it again. I learn and then unlearn and then learn it again. Because the moment I get stuck into that pattern of how it is done, that becomes the safety. And I don't like that, because it means I'm wrong by default. I don't want to have one same conversation ever in my life with the same or different person, because I'm arriving at the moment anew. I'm not the same person as I was when I started the conversation, and I'm not going to be the same person after it. And for me, and I speak this from a personal perspective, there is no one way of doing something. That is for me limiting, because if there is one way of doing, as you say, communicate, then that is the only way I'm going to communicate. But if I get negative outcome and results of that, then am I wrong? What do you think about that? Is there one way of communicating, as you said, learning how to communicate? Or do we approach that over and over every time, anew, afresh, and then...
Of course. Never did I imply or say that, there is one cookie cutter way of this is the way you communicate. No, or feel your emotions or sit with your whatever is happening within you. But there is a how. For example, if people are not aware of how certain emotions impact them, let's say shame, or maybe they're not even aware of it, and it manifests in a certain way. That's a pattern in their everyday life. That's often how people turn to therapy or turn to self-help or turn to, wait, something's not working in my life. Why am I stuck? Or why do all my relationships go to hell? It's because there's a pattern. You just see it one day, like, wait, what is this? And then if you track it back, it could be tracked back to, let's say, shame, for example, now. So there is a how. Remember when we talked about when people are not aware, you're in a room and there are so many doors, but you're not aware of where the doors are because there's like curtains all around. But if somebody comes and says, hey, you know what? There's a door there. There's a door? I never saw that there was a door. You could actually open that door. You don't have to take that person through the door. You can just point, like, there is a door there. You go explore that door. And in the next room, there's a new door. So by saying that, the how, like, there is a door. How do you get through the door? I don't know, but there is a door. And then the person can go explore that. That was an externalized example of if people are not aware of how to handle their emotions, feel them, what is happening? How do I connect and communicate with myself, thus connect and communicate with another? If I don't know how to in a certain area of my life, please help me. Please help me get there to understand what am I not seeing. And if we do that to each other, if we actually help each other in that way, we learn anew with every new person, every new conversation, every new day, because we are evolving humans. And if somebody says, oh, this is the way I like to communicate, I'm going to do this forever, good for them. But when that first door is opened, the rest is history. You just keep opening doors, growing, evolving.
Would you say that is something that is missing in modern relationships?
Many things. True, authentic connection. And for that to happen, there needs to be safety. But not the safety of, I cling to this for my dear life and nothing's going to... But safety in the sense of, I can actually put my guard down. Because I feel safe enough to, here's my full authentic self so we can connect. But for that to happen, one needs to a certain extent, be connected to the self.
What about the situation in which the person is doing that, but the other person doesn't know how to receive that and doesn't know how to support that? If, for example, I'm with someone and I'm vulnerable and expressing myself authentically and honestly, and the response to that is negative, like anger or resentment or isolation, then what would you say is do I still keep opening up?
I would say like this: if you love the person you're with, you would ask them, okay, just like you said before, what's happening now? To see that person, because oftentimes what happens with the person that reacts negatively, it's not out of restriction for the other person, like, oh, don't do that. Because if there is love, none of the parties would want harm, or they would want the best for each other. I would say invite that person, see that person too, because that person probably, most likely, feels unseen, hurt in some way by that decision, behavior, whatever the example was, to be able to connect again, because the surface level problems are most often not the actual thing.
And I believe that one of the main issues that actually disconnect people is this narrative that they keep repeating. What I see in my communication with many of people I know is a pattern, a repetitive pattern of how they say things and how they communicate. And I see in myself a form of resentment piling up when someone asks me constantly, how can I support you? Or how can I do this? Because hearing words and actually feeling the resonance, the energy, and the intention behind them are two different things for me. And as someone who is highly perceptive, I notice that when people ask me these things, I feel like I'm re-experiencing it, for example. If I'm having the same conversation with a person about the same topic and I get asked the same thing, I feel like I'm looping, which is, wait, I've been here before, and I'm having the same conversation about the same topic, and I get asked the same question. And when I have this situation with people, what I instinctively do is, well, you know what? I don't think you heard me, and I'm just going to not talk about this anymore. So I think there's also a rational decision in an individual, and I encouraged men on my podcast and on my YouTube channel to sometimes stand up for yourself. You don't have to go and open up to everyone. You don't have to open up to someone who doesn't listen. You don't have to open up to someone who doesn't know how to listen. And I don't think it's our responsibility to learn someone, to teach someone who doesn't want to be taught. Because I think there is a really, really nice potential for human relation in general between us men and women. And that there is a good intention. But as Alan Watts also said, the road to hell is paved with good intention. We might want to communicate and connect with someone, desire. But in essence, we might not actually be that person that can do that. And that is the birth of responsibility. That is where the fundamental change happens or doesn't.
Who gets to decide if the person is not the person who's able to do that?
Well, it's not a decision, it's a fact. It's an
According
objective.
to whom?
No, but it's objective reality.
Okay.
So it's not something, fact is not according to whom, fact is fact. So if you have two people sitting together and one is opening up to the other and the response of the other is completely unrelated to what the person number one conveyed, and that happens over and over, then you can observe that there is no appropriate response from the person number two, and that the person number one responds in the same way, which is, okay, I'm not heard. And you observe that as a fact. You don't, it's not choosing or from whose perspective. It's simply understanding, this is the dynamic. And when person one says this thing, the person two responds in this way. So I think observing the fact of it is much more important than giving it a story or a meaning that might not be there and might be purely subjective. In forming relations, we also need to understand that our relations goal, if we observe it in that way, is not longevity. I hear so many people, mostly women, say, I want something that lasts forever. I want to be with this man forever. That's not what you want. No, it's not. You want to feel safe. You want to feel secure. You want to feel loved. You want that in the moment. When you fight with that same person, you're definitely not going to be with that forever, in that space together. So it's all in the moment. And it's about dealing with it in the moment and learning how to approach it in the moment. Sometimes, and I'm not saying this is a solution, the best thing you can do is walk away. The best thing you can do is stay. The best thing you can do is tell the truth. And the truth is not comfortable for most people, but it must be communicated. I think as a man, that's the biggest lesson I've learned in my 30th year of life and in this year or previous year, is to tell the truth no matter what, is to tell honestly how it is and how things look for me, what I want from my life, and to just have that unshakable belief and faith that it's going to be okay. No matter what happens. If storm comes, they'll pass. If anything.
Yeah.
To also encourage young men and other men to not do the same. I'm not saying do what I do. Just explore life on your own. But when talking to women, or anyone for that matter, know what you want for yourselves. Because we as men are not encouraged and asked what we want. And women are definitely not encouraged to ask men what they want. And I wish as a man to see more of that. And I'm not saying to men, close your hearts off and shut yourselves off. I'm saying, learn how to communicate, but also learn when to stop communicating. Because us as men, we express physically more than we do verbally. And one of the beautiful things, and at the same time maybe potential downfalls of modern psychology, is the insistence on oral communication between men and women. I'm not saying that is wrong. I'm saying that it's incomplete. I'm saying that it needs more substance. It needs more interaction. It needs more play, which is nonverbal. It needs more interaction, which can be nonverbal. It can have so many beautiful ways in which it can flow and help people understand each other.
Absolutely. Like, what is it? About 70, 80% is nonverbal communication. But yeah, well, I would disagree with you there. I would say if you have a partner and if the same issue is coming up and you said you feel like you're in a loop and you have the same conversation over and over, if you say you love that person, you really mean it, you really actually love that person, and the person loves you, there is actually true love there, and you said, okay, this is the truth, right? Maybe this is a male-female thing. I don't know. This is interesting to explore. But as a woman, my default mode is to wait, introspect. Why did this conversation end like this? And not to be like, oh, this conversation went like this many times, so bye, I'm out. That light keeps flickering. Because it's very the easiest thing, because see, that's avoidance and escapism too. Not looking into oneself. Wait, did I communicate this in a way for this person to understand? Do we speak the same language? Not verbally, but do we speak the same language? Why is this triggering for you? I would ask the partner. Why is this so triggering for you? Why are you reacting like this? Is it the way I said it? Because oftentimes it's the way it's said. It is not what is being conveyed. It is how it's being conveyed. That is imperative. And also, if that relationship, see, it's not about the longevity of the relationship, because it's so easy to blame the partner for, oh, you have a negative reaction, emotional reaction, or whatnot. But
But
instead,
if that is a fact,
yes, but if it is a fact,
yeah, exactly.
but then ask, okay, hey, you take the hand of the other. Let's explore this. Why is this happening for you? Because for me, true love, true partnership is explore. Wait, okay, let's put this aside now. Why is this happening for you? Let's explore that. And when you get to that point, you could actually see the other partner, see you. So it's the journey of actually coming together, closer together, you and me against the problem, and not you are the problem or I am the problem. Not blaming oneself nor the other. And if there is true love there, that would be the mission, to actually see, okay, wait, what is going on here? Why is this trigger coming up for this person? And to explore that together, and not to be like, okay, you know what? I'm done now, so I'm going to seek somewhere else where I can get that satisfied. And also, it's felt. It's felt when the energy is not in the relationship. And as soon as that happens, when a third party comes in, doesn't have to be infidelity in the terms of sexual relationship. But there are so many other ways of taking your energy and focus off of the relationship. So you say, oh, I want to water my grass where I'm standing and water the other person. You say that, but you don't do that. And then there's a disconnect. So to actually not have the same loop conversation, introspection, wait, how am I actually communicating this? Is this person understanding me? How can we better understand each other? And then start there. That's my
It's a really good point. It's a really good point. What happens, what I feel happening to me was I just lose energy and interest.
Why is that?
So it's not, no, but we can go to why, and we can go to the back of the universe, creation of the universe, if we go back to why. It's because I don't want to always, it's not why I want to be in a relation with someone. As a man, I don't want to just keep questioning. All I do is question anyway. So I don't want to when I'm with someone. I just want to relax. That's the thing. It's not... It's as a man, and I tell this to other men too, like I just want to let go. I just want to, my life is tough enough as it is. When I'm with a woman, I just want to relax. I just want to not have to argue and bicker and fight and explain myself why. It's not that that I mind the question and going into it over and over. It's, does this woman want to understand genuinely? Because that requires listening, not asking. It requires listening, because everything, if that woman is, listening and present and healed and whatnot, all these, there's no boxes to be ticked, but everything is apparent and evident in and of itself. Truth is always obvious. Truth is always evident. And the alignment with the truth allows for one to see it. And there is no doubt about it. There are no conclusions. Even if I were to answer the question why, it is my explanation and telling my story of why, and that person's or woman's conceptualization of it. And that is still not observing the same thing.
But that would then be, so you go into a relationship just to relax.
No,
no,
I didn't say that.
Oh,
I said that's what I want.
Okay, yeah,
I want to relax. I enter a relationship because it feels good. It's what I want. I desire it. But at the same time, if I don't, I'm just going to say, hey, I don't like this. I don't like this.
So you don't seek for how to actually solve it?
But what is there to be solved?
So, okay, what is relaxation for you? Maybe that's not the same thing for the other person.
Peace.
Yeah, but what does peace mean for you?
Peace means listening, understanding, and a feeling of security in insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
So this whole life is insecure. Nothing is set in stone. Everything moves all the time. When I'm with someone, with a woman, I just want to feel not the same, but that's why I love solitude, for example. I love being with myself. I love being alone. Can I feel that, or even better, if I'm with a woman? And if not, I'm not going to choose that. Not because I cannot sustain a relation, but simply because I do not see that, I don't see myself feeling better. And it's not because I'm not willing to do any form of work for it. It's simply that, all right, how much work is required then? Because if all my conscious time is to be invested in working on a relation, I neglect myself. Do you understand?
Mm-hmm.
And for me to go into that field, that space where I can meet the woman, then I need to come that afresh and feel good and feel fresh and feel pure, because I have responsibility as to what I bring in to the conversation. it's my responsibility to deal with the difficulties of my life before entering that feeling space. I'm a man. That's also what is expected of me. Because when I speak to women, mostly what I get is, well, this happened and this difficulty. So I want and also need to be someone who can hear that and listen and not just be, oh my God, here she goes again with her problems. When is she going to resolve them? Because I also have experience with women who expect me to resolve their problems or help them resolve them, but rarely communicate it, because women communicate indirectly. They will say, oh, my bag is very heavy, instead of saying, would you please help me carry this bag? So what's important for me is to enter that space afresh and anew. And for that, solitude is required from me. And I've went into this quite deeply. It is not a consequence of self-isolation as a default response as a child. It is the knowing that I genuinely feel better when I'm on my own, when I have peace and quiet, where I can relax and think, and where I'm actually present. Because I don't know what the other person is bringing. And if I know and I see patterns in behavior of the woman, that she's not resolving the problems of her life that she said she will, then I feel, all right, well, I don't want my energy to go here. Because if I do, here is how much. But if that is not enough, if my investment in that mutual space is not enough, I naturally feel I don't want to visit that space very often. Does that clarify it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, relationships are mirrors, and, you know, what you put in, you get back, in a sense. And so if you put in effort, not effort, but if you invest into a relationship, it will also give back.
I'm gonna check one of the cameras.
Okay.
Super. Now we're gonna wrap it up.
Okay, samo da dovršimo što govorim. Okay, time-wise, we are soon wrapping up.
Soon 1 hour.
Yeah, so if you enter a relationship with a person, and if you truly love that person, you want to take that person by the hand, and if that person does not know how to communicate in a way that suits the relationship, better to say than to suit you, because who gets to dictate? Take that person by the hand, teach the person, bring them on the journey, because I can guarantee you that that person wants to be there. Also, another thing, if you love a person, you don't seek elsewhere to fulfill those needs. You say to that person, look, what is the core issue here? Why can't we hear each other? What is the thing? And I'm not a man, so I don't understand, you know, that perspective of being a man and like the provider and helper, and women communicate in a different way. But the core thing is the same. There is a mirroring. So when something happens, there is you always say that, like the cause and effect, like
causation and correlation.
Exactly. And when that starts happening, it starts escalating, because one thing becomes 2 things, 3 things, and then all of a sudden you start equating negative emotions, negative feelings, circumstances, whatever, with that person who's most often there, and then you project them onto the person subconsciously. And what you said was very important, to come into it afresh, anew, and then to, you know, agree with that person you're with. What's our situation like? How do we want our life to look like?
But isn't it more important to instead look at what life is rather than what we want it to be? Because if we don't agree as man and woman on what this is or where we are, then for me as a man, for me, Milan, there is no talking about future at all. Because if we are not observing what is in the same way or for what it is, then that's a basic misunderstanding there. And I'm not even going to think about future if we don't see this as the same. Do you understand?
Yeah, but that's what I was getting at, that if you say, oh, this is what is, and if what is not it, then I'm not going to talk about the future.
No. It's not about that. It's about genuine mutual understanding of reality as it is, not as I say is right, not as someone else says is right. Do we see reality in the same way? Do we experience this reality in the same way? Not same as in identical, but how do we see and experience reality? Because if you, for example, when you look at me, see someone who can harm you, or I look at you and I see someone who's going to betray me, that's not a nice way to approach a relation.
No.
At the same time, again, I said, if I'm with someone who doesn't see reality for what it is, then I cannot even think about future. And then, therefore, there is nothing to resolve. We are here now, and I don't know if we're going to be in the future together. But as a man, I choose to invest my resources elsewhere. And that's not escapism for me as a man. It is an elaborate understanding of my nature, my needs, and my well-being. And not escapism, but simply, oh, okay, I invest 10% of myself in here, I get 5% back. You understand?
But do you think it's always equal? Like you always give the same, or does it go like in waves? Like if somebody has a bad time at work, or goes through some health issues or whatever, it can go up and down. Or no?
It depends for how long are they going through those issues. If I don't see genuine improvement, I'm going to have to face reality for what it is without making conclusions. Because I check in with myself. Okay, I've seen this woman not making progress for a year. How do I feel about this? Because I can also feel I want to get away. Not as an escape, not as abandonment, but hey, I've been with you for a year and we seem to be walking different paths. And I want to support you on your path. That's not separation. That's not escapism. I want to support you on your path. I want to be there. But here is how much I want to be there. You understand? Because, again, you speak about relation from a very feminine perspective, which is man and woman, and that's it. Like, we support each other, love each other. For me, it's, I don't define this. I'm not going to commit to this because I don't think I'm going to commit to anything other than myself and my life in a non-selfish, non-egocentric sense. Because as a man, I go my way, and if a woman wants to follow, that's amazing. But I'm not gonna...
Do you actually think a woman will commit to you if you won't commit to her?
No, but I don't believe in commitment as a mutual concept. I think that everything changes all the time. And if someone says, I'm committed to you, they can be uncommitted the next day. So I'm not... It's all a thing in the moment. And I think of the moment.
That sounds like avoidance and fear to me.
No.
In a sense, like if you say like, I'm not going to commit to anything and everything is just in the moment.
No, I said I'm going to commit to myself and be loyal to myself.
Except for that. But like everything is happening in the moment. Yeah. So if a woman wants to follow, she can do that. But
one has to follow, one has to lead.
And still you want the woman to be committed.
No, I don't want anything. That's her choice. Is that not a person's choice? It's your choice if you're going to commit to someone.
I don't think it's a person. We come back to the you do you and the individualistic westernized society, because if there is a relationship, defined or undefined, there is a we. Primarily, there is the you, there is the I or the two people, but there is also the we. And if one person says, I'm going to do what I want, you do, but then there's already disconnect. Because in my world, how I see it is, even if it's that way, like we live in the moment, or everything is undefined, or I think there's some fear in that, avoidance, escapism, but maybe that's for another topic, another time. The core that I'm getting at in relationship is, if you want to grow, there's going to be shitty periods, but you want a friend primarily. You want somebody you can rely on, who's going to have your back and who wants the best for you. And you invest in that. And also have them on board. So to speak the same language and not to be like, this is what is, but if you speak Chinese and I speak Japanese, we might not completely understand each other.
I agree. At the same time, and to clarify, I don't think, and please be very mindful when you say things like this, I don't think this is avoidance and fear. And I don't think this is...
I didn't say it for you personally.
No, I know. And at the same time, I'm saying to you that, again, to understand oneself, one communicates. So all this communication is essentially understanding oneself through communication, through dialogue, and helping other people see the same thing. So it is not, as I said, lack of commitment or anything. You commit to something you don't know. I cannot commit to a woman or anything unless I've seen it for what it is. Do you understand me? And that what is immeasurable, undefinable. There is no definition in that.
Okay.
There is no defining something that cannot be defined. I look at a woman and I say, oh, I'm going to commit to her because she does this and that. She cooks, she cleans, she's loyal, she's faithful. She ticks all the boxes. That's boring. And all men whom I listen on social media who want that, good luck. You're going to get bored within 2 months. It's a picture perfect woman that ticks all the boxes. Congratulations, you got yourself a collection piece. I cannot commit to something I do not understand, see, feel. This I know and always will. That was my point. And it's not coming from a egocentric, self-centered place. It is the only thing, I believe, that holds me together in this reality. And if the woman does the same, then we can talk. Not the same because I do it, but because, when you said speaking the same language, you speak your language very well, I speak mine. How about we invent our language?
That was what I was getting at earlier.
Well, you didn't say that.
But
That's the essence of communication for me. You are a unique specimen, and so am I. And when this comes together, something beautiful is going to happen. That was my point.
Okay. Okay. Mind blown, because you always put it so beautifully in words. You linguist, you. Beautiful. That was what I was getting at when I was... See? I'm learning with you all the time.
Okay.
My main point of all my ramble about relationships is that people are their own individuals, but when they lose themselves in relationships, either because usually it's like, oh, somebody's avoidant and somebody's a bit more anxious, and if it's not completely secure, who has a freaking secure attachment style anyway, is to find the common language. Joke of the century. To find a common language. So to create something that, when we spoke about there's the one person, the other person, and then there's the relationship. So the relationship is a third entity, kind of. The common thing that brings the two people together. I know you don't like when I define it like that, but it is, I'll use your words, the common language, to create that anew. So when
because in creation we grow.
Exactly. So when one person speaks Japanese to the other and the other one speaks in Chinese, I don't know why I took those examples, it just came to mind.
Racist.
Anime. No, anime.
No, I'm joking.
I love anime. And then they look at each other and point fingers and get sad and distressed and start saying like, this is not what it is. This is not the person, or this doesn't work, or this. But wait, actually they were speaking the different languages all the time, instead of saying like, hey, let's try to create our own language so we can speak, so we can understand each other completely and fully.
Agreed.
That is
Fully
true
agreed.
love and commitment.
That would be labeling it and putting it in a box, and like that is true love. But I think
it's when you want to understand the other person.
I think that people should explore on their own what true love is for them, and not just take what we say or either one of us as at face value, but explore what love is for them, because we are but billions of shards of consciousness exploring this reality. So if love is something for you, it might be different for me. So I think people should explore that. I do not disagree with you. I think that just viewing it as that one thing is also narrowing one's consciousness and understanding of it and giving it like a bite-sized piece. But at the same time, I'm thankful for your comment. We need to bring it to an end, but please say what you want.
I'm a poet. That is love. And love is a billion other things too.
Yeah.
So definitely explore what love is, like individually, all of you listening, watching, what it is for you personally, in relationships, for society. But if you notice you're speaking some other language than your partner, try to, wait, is this another language? Can we find a common one?
Yeah.
And love is much more than that, of course.
Thank you, Jasmina, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for listening. This was Metamorphosis episode 26, I think, and I will see you all soon. Bye.
Bye.